Hello and welcome along to the On the Whistle podcast. We are Africa's biggest braai, and I'm your host, Zayn Nabbi. Today we have a very special show because I have a friend, I have a colleague, I have a co-producer, Sammy Mncwabe, joining us on the show today to break down all things Women's Champions League football final. She was in Lisbon for the big European game, the UEFA game. Sammy, welcome to the pod. So good to see you.
Well, thank you so much for having me, my friend. I think you were the very first pod I started listening to, and I remember you inviting me all those years back, saying I need to have you on the pod. So I'm really thrilled that eventually the stars have aligned, and we are here today talking all things women's football.
Well, our resident Maritzburg expert, Courtney Fries, he normally has this position locked up. And, we don't get on because we have this big rivalry, for those of you who don't know, in South Africa, two cities next to each other, Durban and Maritzburg. But Sammy and I get on because Sammy will recognize that Durban is the undisputed king of cities, not only in KZN, but in South Africa.
Listen, Durban is Durban. I will not complain. I will not argue. Durban rocks. Okay. Pietermaritzburg, we study, we get on with life.
You don't have a beach, so you got no social life.
Oh, totally. And that's the way I've always loved it. We call it the Sleepy Hollow for a reason.
See, she doesn't take the bait. But Sammy, listen, we can't wait to get into the football. This is a very special show because you attended the Women's Champions League final in Lisbon. Before we get there, tell our audience out there a little bit more about your journey in football, where it's taken you, and maybe a little bit tee up how you landed in Portugal for this great event.
Yeah, so my journey with football really begins all the way back in South Africa. Growing up, I was born in Kandla, but I was actually raised in Pietermaritzburg. So typical growing up in the 90s, huddled around the TV and watching the PSL. That's literally where my start with football began. And somewhere along the way, I was lucky enough to be able to model. I'm a former Miss Kaiser Chiefs. As a result, that meant that
Whoa,
I
whoa,
had
whoa. A former Miss Kaiser Chiefs. I've known you for how long? I've never known that, Sammy.
it was Miss Kaiser Chiefs
But
Pietermaritzburg. And
still, what a
I,
title.
I yeah,
You don't
I had
smash.
the yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, it was just this incredible experience. But what that meant was that I got to be part of the traveling fan base, leaving Pietermaritzburg, going all the way up to the FNB Stadium, visiting Naturena. So those were early days in high school. But just like you, I'm raised on a staple diet of sports: football, rugby, cricket, you name it. We
Mhm.
love it because really that's the environment I grew up in.
Absolutely. And Sammy, we won't get into your basketball playing because you were a brilliant player back in the day. Some would say the Michael Jordan of women's basketball in Maritzburg.
No chance. I was just very short and very average. I had more heart than I had talent. And to be honest, I actually think I was a better hockey player because I played field hockey than I was a basketball player. So just always have enjoyed sport, just really understood how it
Mhm.
brings people together and actually also how it builds character.
Sure. Well, listen, Sammy, you have an amazing pedigree as a basketball player and a sports journalist. We've worked together in many environments. But I got to ask you, how did you have your journey? Because obviously you're based here in London with me. How did you get to Lisbon? How did this opportunity to report on the pinnacle of women's domestic football in Europe come about?
I think investment, this is the word that I want to emphasize. I got a chance to go out to Lisbon to cover Arsenal versus Barcelona in the UEFA Women's Champions League final, simply because Pepsi decided to renew its investment and partnership with UEFA. What that means is that suddenly Pepsi was one of the very first brands that had been sponsoring men, and in 2019 they decided and they saw the opportunity to cross over to women.
Mm,
So they have fully been backing women's sports, and now they've renewed that partnership with the idea to make things bigger and better. So for the very first time, we're seeing this mega investment into women's football. We are seeing players on billboards. We are seeing dedicated campaigns. And the benefit of investing in women's sport is that the entire ecosystem benefits. I'm somebody who, as a freelance, would never have had the resources to head
mhm,
out to Lisbon, because you and I have covered the men's Champions League final, right? We
mm,
know how expensive hotels are. We know just pretty much how inaccessible these events are. But so
mm,
with Pepsi's backing, that is with the finances that they're putting into the game, it's creating a multitude of opportunities. And they are very intentional in ensuring that people, journalists, content creators have access into the space so they can tell these incredible stories
mm.
and spread the message.
Sammy, it was a colossal tie between Barcelona and Barcelona Femenina. Did I call them Barcelona? Arsenal. I'm a big Barcelona fan. Love Bonmati, love Parelleo, Puteas. You know, it's a team with a lot of stars. You know, a team that, you know, um, has dominated European and Spanish football for a long time. Was an incredible upset by Arsenal to win that final, and so brilliant for that club that they've got a European trophy after a lot of hurt and pain on the men's side domestically and in Europe. So fantastic that the Arsenal women have won. But I know you did an interview with Anita Asante, the former England international. She's a fantastic mind, a fantastic talker. What was her perspective on the current state of the women's game?
Yeah, I think, Zayn, for anyone that has covered women's football, there is this acute recognition that we are entering a new era. Long gone are the days when we were scrambling for finances, seeing the investment come to fruition. And when I spoke to Anita Asante, I asked her what she makes of this stage or this era that we are in women's football. And this is what she had to say.
My overall feeling is that women's football has grown significantly in terms of participation, interest, and that is globally. You know, the appetite for people to tune in and watch female athletes perform and show their quality on the world stage is immense. I think the development of the game is constantly improving across borders throughout the globe. But of course, there's still so much work to do in terms of um, furthering infrastructures, investment, development, and visibility on a global scale.
So, universally, there's this understanding that women's football in particular and women's sport in general is growing phenomenally around the globe. And I think what we're seeing right now is the ripple effect, that investment that's being made in one part of the world actually has a great impact in another part of the world. So when you look at the fan base, it is extremely engaged. And fans, whether you are in South Africa, whether you are in the USA, or whether you're in the UK, football fans, women's football fans are starting to enjoy a pedigree and quality of entertainment, of investment that we just simply haven't seen before. So it really is a remarkable time to be living in this era, because it's taken many years. I mean, I remember years ago making the trek to some far away, far flung football fields, whether it's Bournemouth or, very small, um, small clubs and small local patches. We now have Arsenal moving and playing their games at the Emirates Stadium. So globally, we are seeing a shift, and it's such an incredible time to be a women's football fan. And what I'm loving about the stage that we are in is that everyone has an opportunity. If you are a coach, there's an opportunity. If you are a player, there's an opportunity. If you are a fan, there's an opportunity. So it isn't just a segment of the population that is getting the recognition, but it's everyone is seemingly feeling and getting to enjoy this new growth phase that we are in.
Yeah, and I'm sure Barcelona Femenina will be looking forward to playing in the new Camp Nou that's being redeveloped. A lot of money from Spotify going into Barcelona football. But to keep it focused on Arsenal for the minute, Sammy, they were the massive underdogs going into this game. I mean, unpack for us how they pulled off this upset. I mean, it's upset for most. I'm just upset that Barcelona didn't win. But I mean, for the rest of football, this is a fantastic result because that Spanish team is made up of, the spine of Barcelona.
I think, what I love is the honesty of women's football fans. So many fans, around 4,500 of them, Arsenal fans, traveled from London and headed all the way to Lisbon. And so many people just said, we are thrilled to be here and we want to see our team do well. But we know that this is Barcelona. They are the big dogs. They have dominated this competition. And going into the final,
Mm-hmm.
Barcelona had won 9 straight games, right? The only loss they had was the first round match loss to Man City, which was a rare 2-0 defeat. So they were on a rampant, they were on a run. But what Arsenal had in their arsenal, excuse the pun, was this attitude of being comeback queens.
Mm.
Arsenal in their run up, they've lost a couple of matches and they've had to rebound. I mean, they recovered from losing the round of two first leg in Harkin, and they ended up topping the group. And so by the time they knocked out Leon, you knew that they meant business because Leon are 8-time champions in Europe. So it was basically Arsenal daring to dream, the fans turning up regardless of the fact that they did not believe that they had a chance. But also something that Leah Williamson said, who is the England international, she said she has always believed that Arsenal had it in them. And an interesting story with Leah Williamson is that back when Arsenal won the Champions League for the very first time, as they were the only England team to win it, in 2007, Leah was a mascot. So Leah was a mascot and she got to see this game and she got to see Arsenal lifting the trophy in 2007. And so now with
Mm.
her coming back in, she is now at the
Circle moment,
pinnacle of
right?
her career. She, so she embraced this and Arsenal just had a belief. And you've got players like Kim Little who joined in 2008. Therefore, she missed that championship
Mm.
run, but suddenly she's been there. So in 18 years, Arsenal has put in the work. They have failed. They have tried again. And the best part about their results is the fact that they have a coach who was a caretaker coach in Renee up until January. And so she's gone and won a European title. So it's just a phenomenal story, and of just one of resilience, one of continuing to invest, and then believing that it can be done. And to see Arsenal pull off that upset, lifting their second trophy, was absolutely magical.
What do you think the global impact of this final will be? Is there one?
Oh, absolutely. You see, I think that someone once said to me, um, we often tell people that where there's a will, there's a way. But we forget that there's the flip side, which says that where there's a way, there's a will. We are now seeing the greatest investment we've ever seen in women's football globally. The final was beamed into multiple countries across the world. Arsenal has a very huge fan base in Africa. And so even the men's fan base is basically thrilled and they are celebrating this win. So
Winning
what
is
you're saying,
winning. Success is success.
and when you love your team, you stick with them through thick and
Look at the
thin.
crowds that went to the Emirates to celebrate those successful women.
And that's it, right? So on the ground, what the impact you're going to see is that there's going to be more investment into women's football. You're going to see more people coming and wanting to buy stakes in women's football. You're going to see shirts, players' shirts flying off the shelves. So, and you're going to see more infrastructure being built. I mean, at grassroots level. So overall, this moment wasn't just about Arsenal. This wasn't just about a European championship. It was a moment for the global game as a whole. Because whilst we didn't have African players in either side, you know, hopefully in the future we will.
We're based in the United Kingdom, Sammy, and in England, there's been a real investment in the Women's Super League. And, there's been big investment in the game globally, but to put a lens on what's going on here in the UK, how has that investment actually stimulated the women's game here?
I think the investment has been huge. So if you look at the start of the year, Chelsea signed US player Naomi Girma, a defender, for $1.1 million. She became the very first $1 million player in the history of the game. What that suddenly meant was that they are taking their club seriously. As successful as Chelsea have been, they've never won a European championship. Like I said, Arsenal are the only team that prior to Saturday's final had won it, and now they're the only team to have won it twice. So the aspirations within Chelsea are massive. Also, Chelsea picked up a treble. They won the WSL. They equally won the FA Cup and the League Cup. And then we saw Alexis Ohanian buying a stake in Chelsea women's football. And he's made it very clear that he has ambitions of making sure that this club is a $1 billion club and he wants to back the Blues. But when the Blues benefit, community benefits as well. I think so. That is what you're seeing on the Chelsea side. But then equally on the other side, you've got an investor by the name of Michelle Kang. Michelle Kang is the owner of the Washington Spirit, who were finished the season second in the NWSL in America. But she also is the owner of Lyon, who just clinched their 18th title, French league title. So when powerhouses like the Alexis Ohanian are investing and the Michelle Kangs are investing, it's lifting the game and every single person who works within the game to just greater new heights. And I also spoke to Anita Asante about this particular investment and growth. And this is what she had to say about the investment in the WSL.
When I see investors, especially like Michelle Kang, as you mentioned, Alexis Ohanian, come in and invest in women's sport, women's football specifically, and in the WSL, it shows that they value women's sport fundamentally. They see the growth potential, not only from a business perspective, but empowering young women and girls to recognize they will have opportunities in the sport and hopefully long careers as professionals. And I think that's what it's about, because there's so many women, as we know, generationally, that not only did not have access to sport or access to football specifically, and now girls across the country will know they have the possibility and opportunities to play football.
There we are hearing from Anita Asante, the former England international, a fantastic player who summed up what you were saying there, Sammy. And so important for us to hear from somebody who's so invested in the game like her. Now, Sammy, there were no African women involved in the final. There were some players of African heritage. Asisata Shwala in the past has been a star for Barcelona. I think that's well known. She subsequently moved on and now plays her football in the US. But Sammy, from your perspective, are there any players that we need to keep a lookout for?
Oh, absolutely. African players are making waves. And again, I am very interested in this new era where you can actually see the investment and see the results immediately. So we just spoke about the London City Lionesses and Michelle Kang investing in this club. What she's done is she's taken this club and for years invested in them. They were playing in the championship and they've now received promotion into the WSL. They'll be there next season. But the trickle down effect is that in Michelle Kang's team, there are two incredible Africans whose names you need to know of. The first one is Nigerian defender Rofiat Imran. And just a superb player who is agile and who blends really well, whose football IQ is exceptional. And there's also another player in London City Lionesses, Cameroonian midfielder Charlene Mayong. So what you see is when Michelle Kang decided to invest, the impact is being felt all the way in Nigeria and Cameroon, because now those players have the means to take care of their families. They have the platform to inspire the next generation. So that's just the impact of one investment that's been made. If you look over in Everton, there's Nigeria forward Tony Payne, who's really just been playing extremely well. Another great player that you ought to know. But I am particularly excited about one player, primarily because at 21 years old, she is blazing her own trail. This is Tanzanian forward Aisha Masaka. At just 21, she's already got Champions League experience from her days playing out at Harken in Sweden. She's won the best goal scorer in 2021 after netting 35 goals in 20 matches. This was in the Tanzanian Premier League for Young African, her club. And right now, she is in the WSL. And so you look at her and you know that these players are going to grow, these players are going to mature, and eventually their national teams will equally benefit. So I'm very excited to see many of them featured in WAFCON in Morocco and just seeing them grow and develop as players.
There is a theory, Sammy, that with more investment in the women's game, a new fan base develops. There's more media attention, and the women's players become household names. Do you subscribe to that theory that all three live in that ecosystem? And are we seeing it in practice, come into effect here in the United Kingdom?
While I was over in Lisbon, it struck me because we now live in an era where you've got women's football stars like Lauren James of Chelsea, Leah Williamson, starring in advertising campaigns alongside greats like David Beckham and the late Pele. So what's happening is that automatically these players are being elevated to the next level where you will now see them everywhere you go. And I think this is what I loved about Lisbon. There were billboards featuring these players everywhere you looked. And so, yes, they're going to become household names. Most of them are already household names within the women's football space, but equally, their names are now transcending the sport. And male football fans will get to know of them. They will see of them. And the excitement is that it will build, right? Because the notion is that when you invest in women's sport, the sport itself benefits as a whole. So I think, yeah, I really love that idea because they are now household names in their own right.
Sammy, as we round off this podcast, I want to firstly thank you for all your expertise and insight and your experiences of the final in Lisbon. And for anyone who wants to get a glimpse of what that was like. I think you can go and follow Sammy on her social media accounts. Just search for Sammy Mncwabe on all your favorite platforms, and you'll get a sense of that. And from our side, Sammy, and from my side, you're such a great voice, not just for women's football, but football in general. Your love for Kaiser Chiefs is so evident. But I want to ask you in closing, Sammy, like, what are your hopes and dreams for the future of women's football globally?
You know what, Zayn? I want the next generation of girls to dream bigger than they ever dreamt before. Because what I realized when I was in Lisbon is that we are now starting to achieve parity in that there is as much investment being pumped into women's football as there is in men's. So, first and foremost, I want girls everywhere to dream bigger. You don't necessarily have to dream of coming to Europe. You can stay and dream and play in your country. I want to see more girls coming in to be coaches. I want to see more girls taking up space, content creators. Our industry, sports media, is a very tough industry, but I want to see many more people who look like me take up that space and create the content and engaging the fans. So for me, I just believe that at this time, I want to see everyone win, and I want to see as many people involved in women's football as possible. Now, those are my aspirations for the greater good for the game. Personally, I would love to author a book which chronicles the impact that African female footballers have had in leagues across the world. I mean, I know that that book does not exist at the moment, so I would love to write that book. And just really, because I think another thing we need to get into the habit of doing is to record history so that those coming in future will know where the game has been and they will recognize the names. I mean, when I think about recognizing names, I think Portia Modises of this world. Um, you know, I want the next generation to know that privileges they have, the paths were paved by these great players. So that's writing a book. And if I'm to dream a little bit bigger, I would love to own a women's football team. It's something that is now suddenly a reality because when I grew up, there were no female owners. The only person that was close to that was Kaizer Chiefs' Jessica Motaung, where I got to see how she navigates the space as a woman in football. And so,
And what about
you
my
know,
team, Golden Arrows of Bafana Bestende with Mato Madladla?
yeah, I mean, I got to meet Manto as well, but I think because I was a former Miss Kaiser Chiefs,
No, no,
I
but
got,
Mato was a bit later, right, when she took over the team.
yes,
So
yeah,
you're 100% right. But it's,
yeah.
in subsequent years.
Yeah, definitely. So we are now, as women and as people who love football, we have a chance to dream bigger dreams. So for me, I just want all of us to dream. And if I ever own a football club one day, I'm going to be a very happy lady.
Well, we hope the Matongs are listening. And if
No,
they're
no,
not,
no.
we'll
It
find a
has
way to
to
get it to Jessica.
it has to be a Mncwabe thing. Sammy Mncwabe wants to be a majority owner in a women's football club. And
Wow.
that I'm putting it out there.
Wow. Let's see what we can do in Maritzburg and beyond. Sammy, it's been wonderful doing the pod with you. Thank you for all your expertise. And for those of you who are listening out there, please let us know what you think. Comments below. Um, Hit us up on our social media accounts, OTW_podcast, on X, on Instagram, on TikTok, or search for the On the Whistle podcast on on YouTube and Facebook, or wherever you get your favorite podcast, whatever platform that might be. Before we go, we're going to hit the mailbag, but let me encourage you one time, just one time, like, subscribe, talk to us. That really helps people find the show. So, in anticipation of the men's second leg of the CAF Champions League final that's taking place this weekend, in Cairo, where Sundowns and Pyramids will face off for the title. It's 1-1 after the first leg in Pretoria. We've had some comments, and we've had Sishle Masengo. He said, Pyramids will lift the trophy. I wonder if he's a Pirates fan. We've had Real Hustlers 15 say 2-2, the final score. Sundowns will win this tie. We've got the party emoji and we've got the heart. Sundowns fan or South African football fan, I think. And then we have Tabang Mutong. So maybe he's related to Jessica Sammy. But he said, I was at the stadium. The pressure Pyramids was putting on the left from the 70th minute, it was too much. I'm not ready for another heartbreak. We need to win this cup. Clearly a Sundowns fan. For those of you listening, go and enjoy the Men's Champions League final this weekend. It's going to be epic. For those of you who want to get your preview dose before the game on Sunday, just search our previous podcast. We did a big preview. We had friend of the show, Lawrence Kohler, and Amir Fahmy, completely dissecting all the key matchups, looking at what it would mean for Sundowns to win their second star and for Pyramids to win their first. A team that has done so much in the last 7 or 8 years through investment to create what they have, although, as everyone will say, they're a new team, they don't have any fans, and the biggest team in Cairo is still teams are Al Ahly and Zamalek. Go and listen. You will value that insight. Sammy, for the final time, thank you. We wish you well. And for those of you listening out there, Salagashte.